Hello everybody and welcome back to another video on the channel, and in today's video I want to rank the rank 1 to 6 spell elements in Wizard101. This will be primarily focused around PvP and advanced combat. If you guys like this video, feel free to let me know in the comments below and leave a like rating and or sub, and I could maybe do more ranking like shadow hits or something like that if you guys like this kind of content on the channel. But yeah, I have S tier, A tier, E tier, C tier, and needs an audit. Let's, just get into things right away here. Starting off with Blade Hound. Now, this card is actually pretty freaking solid, in my opinion. The amount of damage it does, if somebody like 3-folds you, for example, is absolutely incredible. I've nuked people with it. I've gotten nuked with it as well. However, it is obviously very, very situational. They would have to be silly enough to actually 3-fold stack you. So I think it's, B tier. It's not bad. It's also not good. And it's not always good in the meta and stuff like that. So I think right in the middle of the pack is kind of where Blade Hound belongs. Bloodbat. I think this is easily C tier. Probably Myth's worst card. They obviously have arguably the best library in the entire game. A lot of the spells in this tier list you'll see probably S or A tier on Myth, but this card just isn't really amazing. I guess on paper it's like okay, but you would just rather do something else on a Myth anyways, obviously. Centaur, A tier. Pretty good trap counter. It did get buffed a while ago. If you're a life wizard, I would honestly bump it up to S tier, but obviously other schools are going to be dual schooling into it, and they can't really dual school into it efficiently, obviously, because the lack of dual school and the life blades are only for life, so you're not going to do a lot of damage like a life would do with Centaur. So I think it's a pretty solid counter. It's not S tier because obviously it's way too high pips for the amount of damage you're going to be doing and just the value in general. For example, later on, Banshee is literally half the pips, does the same thing, is better, and still sets up a gambit. So yeah, I think A tier is a safe bet for Centaur. Colossus, not a bad card. You have better options on an ice, I would say. The spell used to be really broken back in the day. The 2 other iterations with it, with the 65% ice trap and stuff like that. I think it's kind of situational. I could probably rename this to C tier / situational. Actually, I'm gonna make another slide in here just for situational. Actually, okay. So yeah, I kind of just like redid the whole tier list. I know you guys are probably like, what the hell? But I'm actually gonna put Colossus in situational and Bats in bad. I think this is just a better way to do the tier list. So yeah, situational, it could be okay, but it's kind of hard to even get set up. Cyclops, S tier. Obviously, you can stack this with item card, main deck, and side deck up to a 7 times multiplier. I believe the math checks out too, which is absolutely insane, while breaking shields and maybe doing 1,000 damage a pop, if not breaking a shield. So, extremely powerful card right now in the meta. Obviously, you'd have to land an OT on your opponent, which is kind of tough with Kraken, but you can do it if they overextend or you play well. Cyclops Alley, well, it's literally PvP banned, but I think it's, I don't know. I say it's bad. Minions in general and PvP are just not great because you can't really control them and they could really screw you up. I would like to see them be more geared towards utility and school identity with the minion audit that's coming probably this year. So I would say it's bad card. Dark Sprite. Is it bad or situational? You hit and put infection on if your opponent has a... I would say it's a bad card, bro, honestly. I mean, yeah, because what's the odds you get somebody that's healing, then has a heal over time, and is stupid enough to do it against you, And you're not really doing any damage, and they already have the heal on. It's not like you're putting a -60 on that current heal. So I think it's kind of a bad card. You could argue situational, but I think there's better cards in the game for countering healing, and this one could be better. Earthwalker, I think it's a fair B tier. Couple schools it's good on. I mean, obviously life could work on a myth, could work on a fire, but I think you're better off going the Kraken route on those schools. You could do this and obviously set up your Gambit as well, which I think is pretty cool. But I think it's a very middle of the road card in my opinion. Snowman as well. I think this card is honestly B tier. I think it's a good card. It's not bad. It's okay for ice. Obviously, only ice can use this card, which is kind of what brings it down. If every other school was able to dual school and use this card, I'd honestly put it probably in A tier because it is a very good counter to Threefold and Vampire. But I'm bringing it down to B tier because only ice can actually use it effectively, obviously, right? So I think B tier is a safe bet. Firecat, I would say situational, maybe B tier. I mean, Detonate in general, being 1 and 2 pips is really, really powerful. However, I think most people would rather Troll instead of Firecat to preserve their, fire buffs, like a Fuel, maybe, or something like that, or keep their Fire Blades on their next hit. So, kind of situational, I guess. I think you're just better off going the Troll route, which you'll see later on in the tier list here. Fire Elf, I think Fire Elf is actually really, really good. I think in general, because of Kraken in the meta, it's not getting more love and people aren't seeing a lot of use of it. I've seen a lot more myths dual schooling with Fire Elf. I do that as well. Very good card, very cheap, decent shield counter, does decent damage, sets up a Gambit in 1 turn. Just pretty good, very good card. Frost Beetle. Oh, this is A or B. Is it as good as Centaur? With all the cosplay in the meta, I think I'm going to have to put it down to B tier. Once cosplay is fixed, I think there's an argument where you could put Frost Beetle, honestly, in B tier. Honestly, guys. Or sorry, A tier. But with all the cosplay, I think it has to come down to B tier, unfortunately. Not a bad card at all, though. Gearhead, S tier. I mean, obviously only Balance can really run this. You're kind of mental if you try to run this on another school. Only Balance can run it because obviously they get a free mastery, free accuracy to their school. Does like a 600 to 1,000 damage on the shift. And then you can shift a damage and a heal, or a damage or a heal, countering dots, countering gambits, and also countering heals. So just way too cheap. I think this card probably is broken to the point where it needs an audit. If there's an S tier and needs an audit, I'd put that in this one. Way too broken. They really need to reevaluate this card in general. Ghoul, S tier as well. Shield Gambits in general, very powerful. Hit, drain, and you get 2 30 blades, which is absolutely insane considering you're not even like the blade school, which is Storm. So the amount of tempo you get off this is absolutely insane. On top of just draining and being a death, this card is really, really overpowered. But that also ties into Shield Gambits being the best in the game. So really, really OP card. Elephant, I think that's an easy A tier. I don't think it's S tier. I think it's probably Fire's best card right now in the meta, I would argue. Very solid card. One of their only cards they can really use effectively, I'd argue as well. I think it's just a safe bet. Not really too overpowered or anything. Hydra, S tier. Obviously, this card is above damage per pip. 3 shields that are 35%. You can't really hit through them. And you can't overtime because they'll just gearhead, right? So too much damage, too much value, too much tempo. Can't counter it. Shield counters aren't good enough to counter it. It's just broken in the meta. Wyvern, again, B tier. Simply has the same problem as Snowman. Only Ice is able to use this card. So other schools can't really use it unless you're like a trap stacker dueling into Ice to make this work. I guess that could work, but this would be the second best blade counter, or third best if you count Banshee and Quake in the meta. But again, if any school could use it, I would honestly put it up to A tier. But the fact only Ice can use it and like PvE trap stackers puts it down to B tier. Pretty good for an Ice though. Immolate, I would say it's bad, maybe situational. Yeah, I'd put it in situational because I've done Immolate on my fire and had some success. I've also tried to do it as well on like a myth, but the problem is if you try to do it on an off school, it doesn't really do much damage, and you're actually eating your buffs like your blades and your traps because it's chromatic, so it actually kind of hurts you. So if this wasn't chromatic and other schools could use it, I think it would honestly be maybe B tier. But the fact it's chromatic and eats your buffs and does like little to no damage, I think you could argue bad or situational. But I think it is cool to set up a gambit in one turn and counter your opponent. So that's why I have it in situational. Next up, we have Imp. This card's just bad because you're better off just casting another heal, like another berry, another goat monk, another regen, right? And the counters still aren't that great. I mean, they work better now than they did before, Pirate and Triton. But you're just better off, like, you know, just casting another one or just shielding, right? Not really a point in detonating or activating the heal. Just not a good card, unfortunately. Kraken, S or A tier? I think Kraken's an S tier card, I'll be honest, bro. The fact any school can dual school with it and arguably get more value than a Storm because the damage per pip makes it extremely powerful in the meta. Also, I mean, overtimes being a very scary thing is kind of why you have to use Kraken. You can get tempo, do good damage, and then just nuke your opponent out of it if you like Kraken into a Shad. Very good universally. It really gets enabled because the fact it's chromatic blades, any school can use it. If the blades were not chromatic, I'd probably put it down to like maybe B tier or A tier if they weren't chromatic. But the fact they are chromatic makes this card easily an S tier card in my opinion. Leprechaun, pretty bad card. The reason this card is bad, and I told the developers this when they were auditing it back in the day, the reason it's bad is because you're not setting up a gambit in one turn like Fire Elf, right? You're hitting, clearing, you know, a trap or two, and only getting one heal. Now, you're only packing Leprechaun to counter PvE trap stack, and this isn't enough tempo to even warrant or counter PvE trap stack, right? Because they'll just simply run out the heal because that's the reason they're not good. So then they'll keep on trapping and going on with their day. So this card would need to change to clear 2 and generate 2 heal over times. Whether that makes it down to 3 rounds or whatever, I don't really know. But just this card, honestly, I'd say it needs an audit, bro. Yeah, no, I'd say it needs an audit. It just needs a buff. It needs to take away traps and set up a gambit in one turn like Fire Elf to make it a good actual trap counter in the meta. Bad or needs an audit. You could argue situational, but it's just a very undervalued spell. I would say it needs an audit, right? Because in the meta, you see people overtime a Storm, like with Frostbite, you know, single OTs, not protected. And they're okay with it because they know there's no actual good counter to it or any consequence to it, really. So I think this card should get buffed to actually make it be a consequence to people overtiming a Storm in the meta. Damage is very low. You clear 1, which again is cool. You don't set up a gambit like Banshee, and the weakness is way too weak. So this card just really needs a buff, needs an audit. Minotaur, I would say it's A tier. The reason I wouldn't put it up to S tier is because, again, Tri-Shields are 0 pips. Not everybody can dual school because of lack of stats. And obviously, pins don't really work on schools, right? Look at a Storm, for example. Even if I'm fully pinned out to a myth, I'm still losing value because I'm losing DPP, and I'm missing like 30 peers and like 60 damage on top of the DPP, right? So hitting and then clearing into chromatic traps is really good. However, trash fields being 0 pips and this being 5 pips is really counterintuitive. They'll just shield again and you're kind of screwed and you'll die to the shield gambit. So, I mean, nah, I think A tier. It's okay. It's okay. Just trash shields are too good in general. So, yeah. Locust, I would say it's a bad card. I mean, I've seen some people have success with it. Back when it was shift 3 and then hit, I would say it was really good. But right now, I wouldn't really say it's good. I guess you could argue situational, but in my opinion, it's just bad. It should have stayed as 3, then I would put it in situational, but 2, not that great in my opinion. Nature's Wraith, B tier. I think this card is pretty solid. You would have to carry the dual school on your life and give up jading to obviously make this get any value. Pretty solid card. Obviously, you can just fire elf into this, into a gambit, or just, Gulp Monk or Caddy into another one. So a lot of value. Pretty solid card. Not bad at all. Scarab, I think this is situational. Same thing with Scorpion as well. Both of these cards are not bad, a little bit situational though. Not too OP, kind of annoying to deal with, but you can play around it typically. Seraph, I might get some hate for this, but I think Seraph is not bad. I think Life Wizards just haven't really figured out how to leverage HOTS yet. A lot of them are still kind of hung up on jading and stalling. But I think if Life Wizards get a bit more smart over time, I think this card is actually really good. Obviously, very situational. Obviously, you can just do another Goat Monk and get a lot more value. But, someday when, life stats and life cards aren't so inflated, I could see this card being very solid in the meta and a very good card in general to be creating pressure on a Life Wizard, in my opinion. Pirate, I would say this card is B tier. Pretty good damage per pip. Obviously, you counter healing and protected, and you get 250 shields back. In general, in the meta, I would say this is only good because death stats are absolutely insane. Other schools can't really use this because, again, they don't really get the stats a death can. So, I mean, it's really good on a death. Everybody else, I would say it's situational, but you only really see death using it. So, I would say B tier. Snow Serpent, same thing with bats, needs an audit. Just a really bad card, unfortunately, in the meta. Same thing with Spec Blast. I think this card is just absolutely horrible. I mean, honestly, I just put it in bad. I think you could fix the card. I think it's a cool concept, but right now it's just a bad card, Stone Colossus, S tier. I don't really need to explain this. I mean, if you PvP, you kind of know why it's S tier. Myth just PvEs you. Shark, I wouldn't say it's a bad card because on paper value is not bad. I think Shark is bad because it's only a 3-pip card. If Shark was like 5 pips or 6 pips, I think this card would be absolutely insane. So I think it just needs an audit, bro, honestly. I don't think it's bad. Situational, yeah. But I think it just needs an audit, bro. I think if this was a 5-pip like Stormzilla or Triton, this would be absolutely insane. Unfortunately, it's just way too low, and you need higher damage in this meta with how fast it is. Shark just doesn't keep up. Even though, yeah, the damage per pip of it is good, you need bigger hits in the meta. So if this was like 5 or 6 pips, it'd be good. Zilla, in between bad and needs an audit, I'd say just a bad card, I'd say, because at least Shark, you could argue it's decent. This one, you have to take the time to 3-fold and then take the time to Zilla. And then you only get 3 rounds to even go for a Jhin Gambit, and the healing's not that much. But I think this is more of an issue of you would have to pack Jhin, Zilla, and 3-fold and pull it all in the right manner, which is impossible. The meta is more just, I hit and do this, and that's it, Too many things going on here. Very undervalued as well. Just not really a good card. I think Zilla and Shark should swap, in my opinion. Sunbird, situational. I think it's not a bad card, I'll say. It's just Overtime Fire doesn't really see a lot of use or love right now, I would say. And again, kind of the same problem as, Storm Shark, I'd argue, where it's too, I'm going to put it in needs an audit, actually. Because these cards would be really good if they're like 5 pips, but they're just too low pips. And yeah, they are good damage per pip, but you just can't go that low on pips in the meta when it's this offensive, So yeah. Snake, just a bad card. Old Snake should come back, where it was literally Storm Beetle, but on Thunder Snake. I don't know why they got rid of that. It was very accessible. People did not have to get Beetle TC or make a Beetle pet. They could just run Snake Spellament and be cool. It was kind of nice. This card is just bad because it's, what's the word I'm looking for? It's like reactive, I think. Yeah, it's reactive is the right word. And even then, you're just better off using other cards, right? Triton, B tier. Same thing with Pirate. I mean, I think Triton is very weak damage per pip. 55 blades are nice as well, but you don't set up a Gambit, like another card you'll see here pretty soon coming up. So I think it's okay. I'd argue other schools can use it better than Storm, obviously, because, I mean, the dual school aspect, cosplay problem in the meta. I think it just really needs a damage buff, or it should set up a Gambit in 1 turn, in my opinion, to make it better. Wraith, I would say the spell is A tier. The reason being is because the 2 -65 weaknesses is absolutely powerful, and you still get 505, which is a base Wraith, which is just insane value, obviously, on the hit and drain, right? The reason you don't see it more used in the meta is because Vampire is easier to do, and Blades in general aren't good because obviously Quake and Banshee is very oppressive in the meta. So you'll see Death's Vampire instead of go for a Wraith. But the second Vampire gets nerfed, you're going to see people dual blading and probably going for a Wraith in the meta. So very good card, just very underrated right now in the meta. Vampire. Say A or S tier? I think S tier, bro. I think S tier. Because even if you get a counter matchup, like a Myth or an Ice, if they overextend and you cover it, like, the amount of tempo you get from it is nuts. And I've seen people even run Darkmoor deck in this meta because their stats are so good on a death, they can still just PvE and threefold and just win that way. So I think, obviously, the hit and drain, the tempo, way too much. Gambiting weaknesses for 2 -60s, way too much. This also could be because the counters to weaknesses aren't that great. Obviously, the only good ones are what Stone and Snowman, but only Ice and Myth can actually use those because you can't dual school into them because dual schooling isn't supported in the meta. So maybe if they made better weakness counters that were accessible to everybody and left Vampire and Wraith broken, maybe that could be better, but I think in general they're just too overvalued. I think -40 would be lots, in my opinion. Troll, S tier as well. I mean, I think the spell is even bugged right now. I heard it actually gives like 50, it's like 0.5% more value or something than it's supposed to, or something like that. It's supposed to be 1.5% value, but it's actually a whole 2.0 value or something. So in general, very good because shield gambits are free. You can just dump all your pips and still detonate and get tempo because you break a weakness, you break a shield with it. And yeah, just tons of damage. Really good card. Phoenix, this card's just bad. I'd say probably needs an audit. Yeah. Nah, I'm gonna say bad. Because it's kind of like Snake, right? It's just bad. I mean, the damage is okay, I guess. But the problem is, if you have HOTS, you're just going to let them do their thing, or they're going to get Krakened for the most part. You're not going to really, try to make a HOT out of a dot. And even if you do, it's only a 3-round one. So it's not that good and doesn't last very long, which is a common trend problem you'll see in the meta with HOTS. They just don't last long and they're easily countered. So Banshee, probably the best card in the entire game. I'd put that all the way up there. This card basically disrupts and destroys the entire meta to the point where cosplay, everybody was doing it because that's the only way you can get around Banshee is by cosplaying. So this card basically just runs the whole meta, and I'd be very surprised if King Sal does not nerf it because it's obviously just the most broken spell in the game right now. All these spells are, really good and broken to an extent, but Banshee just literally disrupts the entire meta, and it really needs to be looked at by KI, in my opinion. But that's my tier list, guys. What do you think about it in the comments below? I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you guys on the next one. Thank you for watching. Take care.